Hello, Christina, faculty and staff. Thank you for taking a few moments today to really help us to drive some of the work we're doing right now in our strategic planning process. As you know, it's very important that we have the input of all of our stakeholders. And of course, our faculty and staff are our most critical component of that feedback as we look to see how we can improve student outcomes in the next number of years. So hopefully all of you have been participating so far by completing surveys, and maybe some of you have also participated as being in part of one of our focus groups. That data, along with other data such as student outcome data that we get from SBAC, our retention rates of our faculty and staff, our disciplinary data, and also some information about not just our district, but other districts that surround us and other districts that are similar to us in the state and in our nation. It is our hope that this will help to drive our work as we begin to craft our strategic plan. And today we're seeking your input on our initial draft information. So we right now are in our analysis phase. We're collecting information and we're beginning the strategy development. That's where we come up with what are our priority outcomes? What is it that we want our students to be able to do? Our strategic themes, how are we going to organize that work? And our objectives, what is it that we want this strategic plan to help us to accomplish? And then in our next phase, we'll start the really hard work of actually planning and taking those action steps in order to improve our student outcomes. So let's dig into the data. The first graph that we are showing you here is showing the Christina School District the last number of years and student enrollment. And as you can see from the data, we still continue to have movement that started when charters began, and we continue to have movement from our schools into charters and slight increase in choicing to other districts. Of course, an important thing for our staff to recognize and be able to communicate to our public as why our enrollment in each of our individual schools might be down slightly, that our overall, the number of students that we are educating and funding the education for continues to be pretty similar, if not increasing, over the last 10 to 15 years. If we look at our next graph, on this graph, we see proficiency rates. And this is an interesting story as when we look from 3rd, 5th, and 8th grade, we know our cohorts change slightly, and we'll see that in a minute. But in 3rd grade, both reading and math, over the last 3 years prior to COVID, we were seeing a fairly good uptick in both reading and math in our achievement scores based on Smarter Balanced. In 5th grade, we were seeing fairly flat in ELA and math, with maybe a slight uptick in math over those years. And in 8th grade, we were seeing, again, a decline in those ELA and math scores if we looked over the 3 years from 2017 to 19. As we move to the next slide, this breaks that same data down by both race and ethnicity as well as household income. And this is a story because it really speaks to not only do we have a difference by race and a difference by household income, but that household income does not drive the conversation about proficiency by race. In other words, if you look, students, percent proficient for white students, low income, surpasses Hispanic, Native American, and African American from students of not low income. In other words, it's not just income that's a driver in Christina, but race itself is a driver for student achievement, and it's something that we have to address. And that points to those bars. If we look at us as compared to other school districts in our area, as you can see, similar demographic data to Capital School District, Colonial School District, similar in our EL, students with disabilities, low income, as well as if you break it down by race, not as much with red clay. but you can see there are some similarities with some of our surrounding districts. And that is to sort of tell the story as we move into these next few slides, which is comparison data. When you compare third, fifth, and eighth grade by district, you can see that Christina is scoring right at or above most of our surrounding districts in third grade. And we're there right with everybody when we look at fifth grade, just slightly below the state and Red Clay and above Colonial and Capital. When we go to eighth grade, though, you'll see that slips and we fall below the rest of the state when we get to eighth grade. If we look at math, I'm sorry, this slide was ELA. When we look at math, in third grade, we actually surpass all of the districts that are comparable, including the state as a whole. In fifth grade, we're right there with our surrounding districts, slightly below the state. But again, when we go to eighth grade, we see that other than Colonial, we start to fall below our comparable districts. Looking at SAT scores, again, we fall below many of the districts and the state around us in both reading, but in math, we see a slightly better look when we get to SAT performance, still falling below the state and Red Clay, but closer to our other comparable districts. If we look at graduation rates, we know this is an area of concern that we've had when we look at comparable districts in our state, as well as comparable districts around our nation. You will see that our graduation rate is lagging. And this is an area of concern and an area of focus for us that we need to look at is our graduation rate across our districts or our district. And when we look school by school, this is a little bit the comparison on the nation. Our district would fall under high minority and would fall under high income for each of our schools. So these are comparing not all high schools, but just graduates of high minority schools and graduates of high income schools. You can see all of our high schools fall below both of those comparables other than Newark High School in 2017. And looking at 6-year completion rate, again with those same comparable nationally, looking at our 6-year completion rate, it is better. It shows a better trend, but still lags and still definitely an area of focus. When we look at teacher retention, and this is comparing our teachers and our students, you can see there's definitely a difference between our student demographics and our teacher demographics, with a much higher percentage of our teachers being white, where a much higher percentage of our students being African American. So an area that we want to look at is how to help get our distribution of teachers to more reflect our student population. So what are some things that were discussed in our focus groups? And we had a number of focus groups. These are them. I'm not going to read through all of this, but I'm going to do some highlights. We had a number of different groups that provided feedback to the stakeholders. And the next few slides I'm going to share is their feedback, sort of what we heard in lots and lots of those stakeholder groups, and then going down the list to things we may have only heard in a few. So major findings, key assets of the district, the quality of our teachers and staff. Overwhelmingly, our community agrees that our teachers and staff are our key asset. That was said more than any other. So thank you. Thank you for being that key to our success. We have quality programs. We collaborate with the local community. We support our students with special needs and our after-school activities. We're all kind of multiple stakeholder groups. These were things they identified as assets. Opportunities. Innovation was something they talked a lot about, us needing to stay competitive and relevant. Increasing parent engagement, recruiting talented leaders and teachers, increasing our programming around the increase we've seen in student needs, that we need to fix our public perception That we need to make sure that we create pathways to expand career awareness and help our students find jobs, that we need to consider changes to our high school configuration. We need to make sure that we're thinking about how our charter schools are affecting us, that we need to increase partnerships, and that we need to improve our infrastructure of our school buildings. Other things that they pointed out was potential changes of our district boundaries as an issue. That's something that's been going on in the Reading Commission. Also, the national incidents and dialogue around racism and bias, that we need to keep that in mind as we build our plan. And finally, we need to continue to think about our declining enrollment. When we look at our surveys, we had a great turnout of our surveys. Almost 1,400 surveys returned. About 650 of those were from students, 300 from parents, 250 from teachers, 130 from other employees. And then we did have community members. If you look, some identified as charter, 66, and 57 community members. So we had a really good response rate. We were very happy with that. 37 of our Spanish surveys were returned. Looking at things that they saw, you can see, and again, I'm not going to highlight this, but program offerings were seen as one of our major assets, along with course offerings, the diversity of the district, leadership, communities and families. Communication was seen by our parents, interesting, but not in our community and our teachers, but our parents think that was a strength. If we look at opportunities, supports in mental health, curriculum and academics, retention was seen as a really important thing by teachers. Consistent communication was seen again across the board, except for parents, and our teachers saw that really high. And again, I'm not going to read all of these, but you can see the areas that were seen as opportunities and the different subgroups that found those to be important. Finally, last piece of information. This comes mostly from census data, and that looks at opportunities for our students in the Wilmington area. The higher your education, you can see the more likely you are to be employed. And also you can see separate data is what the average income would be. So in Wilmington, it is extremely important for you to have a college education for a percentage of employment. And also you can see major discrepancy in income. When we look in the Newark area, the employment numbers are a little bit more even. However, you still see that major disparity in potential income, average income based on final degree. So, as we go into today's meeting and talk a little bit about your thoughts and feelings around the strategic plan draft as it is, some things to keep in mind. Here are the components. The vision. The vision is our desired impact. Why do we as a Christina School District exist? The priority student outcomes are specific, measurable results that we can see to improve student success. The strategic themes are those big areas, those big ideas that need to be addressed to achieve those priority areas. And then the objectives are the choices about how to address the strategic themes. So we're going to develop these strategic initiatives, which are going to be those big projects, those big ideas that we're going to implement in order to achieve our objectives. And then we're going to create action plans, which will be step by step. How do we get the projects done? And that is the work that we will be doing over the next few months. So here is the draft of our strategic plan to date that we're looking for feedback on. Our priority outcomes. What is it that we want to achieve? Increase math proficiency, increase ELA proficiency, ensure success during middle school and high school transitions, increase our graduation rates, increase a sense of belonging, inclusion, safety, and well-being, ensure equitable outcomes for all of our students regardless of race, ethnicity, income, or their disabilities, and strengthening the transition to college and career. So we didn't draw these out of a hat. These are what came out of that data. The question today is that what you see as our priority outcomes, or are there others that we need to address, and why would you identify those as the ones that we need to address? So if we're going to achieve those outcomes, areas of focus, our strategic themes that we're looking at would be these based on the input we've had so far. Meeting the needs of the whole child would address many of those priority outcomes. Ensuring a consistent instructional framework, again, would help us to meet many of those outcomes. Building career awareness and preparation. Recruiting and retraining high quality teachers. And promoting our district and branding it and making connections with our community. These would be those big ideas. And then under each of these, we have a number of potential objectives. Enhancing positive connections with students, increasing equitable access to programs and opportunities, increasing access to wellness and socio-emotional resources and support, ensuring targeted instruction to support and align individual student needs. Those would all fall under that idea of meeting the needs of the whole child. Another set of potential objectives to ensure a consistent instructional framework would be establishing an ideal profile of the graduate, adapting and aligning rigorous, inclusive, and current curriculum, enhancing instructional delivery models, ensuring physical infrastructure that supports the instructional requirements. That all fits under that instructional framework. Building career awareness, increasing exposure and alignment to career opportunities, increasing access to career pathways, and maximizing our partnerships that support the career readiness. To ensure we retain and recruit high-quality teachers and staff, ensure racial and cultural awareness, and ensure high-quality teachers that reflect our student population. And a final list of potential objectives to promote our district brand and connections, increasing participation of parents in the community, and increasing positive brand awareness. These are what has come out of the conversations we've had with our community and the conversations that we have had with you all through focus groups and in the information we received through your surveys so far. And today, we're asking you to have a conversation with your principals to help us to hone this and make it what it is that we will all need to be successful with our future strategic plan. So now, I turn it over to your facilitator in your building and program, and look forward to all of your input that they're going to be capturing today to incorporate in the next draft that we will present to our school board. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for commitment to our students. Thank you for all the work that you've done in this very challenging time. We appreciate all that you've done and really look forward to your input today. Thank you.